Hello everyone. Today is grape harvest today. They're all coming off and they're all going home, and apart from a few bunches, there'll be a few bunches going out to neighbours. We'll keep a couple of bunches in the fridge to eat as proper whole grapes, and the rest are going to be juiced. And we've got some big 1 litre flip top bottles that we're going to bottle the juice up in. Then we're going to pasteurise it in a pan and then store it for use over the winter and into next year, however long it lasts. I've no idea of the quantity I've got on here. I'll make a guesstimate when I've harvested them all. No idea how much juice I'm going to get out of it, but we've got 8 1 litre bottles, and then we've got a couple of big mason jars as well that we could use if needs be. I think we're going to get more juice than we've kind of bargained for, but we'll go through this. We'll have a look at the vine first, and then I'll explain how I've got to this stage, and then we'll harvest the grapes and get them away home. So this variety is called Black Hamburg, and it's a seeded variety, and I made a valiant effort this year to prune the bunches back in the early part of the year to stop what's happened here, this congestion. You can see some of the bunches are sort of separate and on their own and will come off easily, but you don't want them sort of too close together, because on a wetter year, it's not been very wet this year, has it? On a wetter year, and if it was a bit warmer now, I would probably have mould in the middle of there, and I might just do yet when I take these bunches off, so I don't know. But yeah, if we look down towards the other end, I'll show you an issue I've got grapes all along, too thick in places and about right in others. But when we come down to here, the weight has been so much that this vine has broken off. It's actually snapped the wire. You can hopefully just make that wire out. Yeah, there we go. You can see it snapped the wire, because this was just a training wire, just to train the branches up to grow the plant. But anyway, that's what's happened. The weight of it is just taking that down. So if any of you have ever been to Hamburg Palace in London, you will have seen this vine before. It's exactly the same vine. It's called Black Hamburg. As I say, it's a seeded variety, and I planted it back in 2016. Now, I've never actually grown my own grapevine before. I've tended other people's and picked other people's and eaten other people's, never actually grown my own. So I kind of looked it up, and my options were to either grow it outside or grow it indoors, because it can be quite cold and mild up here when the rest of the country is baking, as has been proved this year. I decided to grow it indoors. When it comes to growing indoors, you've got 2 further choices. Do you plant it outside, put a hole in your structure and feed the vine through to grow on the inside, but the roots are outside, or just plant it inside? As this ground along the back of the polytunnel here stays wet for all of the year, I decided it'd be better to plant it inside. But I am forcing the roots to grow under the tunnel and out underneath the sheds that are behind the polytunnel back here. And I've done that by every couple of years. I dig along and around it and sever any roots that are growing into these 2 beds here. And that just keeps most of the roots going back the other way. Now, the first year, as I say, I got a stick, and it was about this big, and it was just a sticker. Must be, 2 foot long, with a tiny bit of root underneath it. And I planted it in the middle of the polytunnel there, and just allowed it to grow up, and it probably grew up about 10 foot. But at the same time, some side vines were growing out, and they probably grew to, can't quite remember now, probably about 10 or 15 foot, because once a vine gets hold and is growing, it will eat you out of house and home. So before you plant a vine, you've got to understand that you're going to be spending a lot of your growing season cutting it back to keep it tamed, and I'm constantly cutting that back. It's great material to go in your compost heap, so it's not a bad thing. So yeah, the first year I chopped it back so that the side vines were as long as the distance between 2 hoops in here, and I chopped the overall height of the vine down as well. The idea is you don't want the top growth to get ahead of the root growth. You've got to give a vine time. Yes, you can plant a vine and you can take fruit off it the second year, third year, go on like that, but it's much better to develop a vine and develop the plant itself, which is what I've done here. And I did have 3 vines going across. I took one off last year because it was too much. But anyway, the next year I allowed that vine to grow a bit taller, and I had the 3 vines coming out from that, starting to train them. And again, at the end of the season, I trained them back to fit basically 1 hoop either side of where the plant was planted, length. And then the next year I let them grow the full length, and I put these sort of, well, these are training wires just to train the vegetation, and I've never put anything stronger up. My mistake. I should have done, because I just assumed it was holding it and it was fine. And then for the next year you let a couple of bunches grow on each little vine. Bear in mind I had 6. I probably grew 12 bunches that year, and very gradually, again, you're still growing the roots, and I was hacking roots back in here. So I was trying to persuade the roots to grow outside, which I think they've done now because they're supporting the vine itself. And you've got to be aware of watering as well, so you can't really overload the root system too early. So that's how we've got to this stage over a number of years. So that was 2016 I planted that. It's now 2022, so it's taken me 6 years to get to this, but it's now bountiful, and next year I can look after it sooner, better, and have a better harvest. Because the idea is that you want big luscious bunches of grapes as opposed to lots and lots of skinny small ones. And you will have noticed earlier when I showed you what I got down the other end there, that some bunches were tiny and small, some are underdeveloped, the grapes aren't very big on it, and some of the grapes have actually shriveled up through lack of water. So the idea is to thin the grapes so that the vine and the whole plant itself can support the grapes that are there. Next year I can get onto it much earlier and have a better harvest all round. And then once you're in that situation, you can then go in and prune actual bunches. So there's always sort of 4 or 5 grapes in there that won't sort of change colour, or they won't swell up, they'll stay tiny and small, or they'll shrivel up. Prune those away and the rest of your bunch improves. So I'll have fewer bunches next year, but much better grapes, and that's the general idea. But anyway, we'll get these grapes off the plant now. So pruning the grapes, I always try just to minimise the foliage around the plants, and I'm doing this sort of all summer long, as I just said a few minutes ago. Always trying to just minimise the foliage, because you will get an awful lot. And then just carefully take these grapes off. I mean, these are lovely. There's 1 or 2 smaller ones. There's 1 or 2 smaller ones and 1 or 2 dried up ones, but that's all right. There's still plenty of gorgeous grapes in there. And then of course you don't want to bruise them when you're putting them in your tray. I mean, when many of you have seen people picking grapes, they're just tossing them into buckets because they're going for grape making. I want to keep these as nice as possible for as long as possible, because I'm giving some grapes away. So already I've probably got 4 or 5 pounds. Look at that. Isn't that fabulous? Wow. So I picked my way and pruned as well as I've gone along, and I've only picked myself away along to the first hoop. There's 3 more hoops to go. You can see them here. So I've been pruning as well, getting the worst of the rubbish off. And if I just pan down, there's the pile of rubbish, and there's the grapes. I've got a full tray full. Now I'm going to stop there and take these home and process them and see what we got. and then work from there. So I'll have to come back to these on another day, and I think some winter reading on how to grow, prune, train these. A bit more is needed. I did a little bit 6 years ago, and then I've just been following my instincts ever since. But I can see now that pruning the bunches at the very early stage when they first come in is the important and key factor, and to also make sure that where that bunch of grapes is going to form, to make sure it's not inhibiting any other growth and it's not going to get tangled down. I had a couple of situations when I was up the step ladder at the other end today, as I was pulling a bunch off, cutting it and pulling it off, because it was tangled round branches, all the ripe grapes were falling to the floor and sort of splatting. So I've wasted quite a bit of crop, and I'd rather grow the crop correctly and have proper fully formed bunches where I can actually prune the bunches themselves, thin the bunches out and get proper grapes. So that will be the aim for next year. I'm most of the way there now and I'm happy, but we'll take those home today, process them, see what we get, and then I can work from there to get the rest of this off over the next few days. But that's it for this one. Look after yourselves, please stay safe, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Ta-ra now.